Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 200 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. You know, I'm pretty amazed and happy and surprised and everything to be at 200. But also, I want it to be just another video. I'm not finished with this angel. Still got a lot of work to do. I'm not finished with this apprenticeship. Still got a lot of work to do. And I don't want to put, what you'll find as you do this work is there aren't milestones where you reach a point and it just magically all gets better. You have accomplishments all the time. You know, I got a pile of dust and gravel down here that's that thick. Every one of those pieces of stone is an achievement, okay? It's like these videos. They're just going to keep going until I think I said enough or I'm dead, until it's done. So, but I'm working on this. I'm using both my, to sink my perimeter. And at this point, my focus is more upon getting it to be even with my 8-inch depth, okay, from the face. So I've got an 8-inch background. I try to get that pretty flat. Then I understand I can sink it more, but I don't want to go, if I've got half an inch to an inch, I got to go, and I got to carve feathers. If I can have an undulation and pick up some of that volume and still have the depth, I don't want to just mow right down to that absolute depth. I want to leave that extra material, not surrender volume. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So up in here, this is basically even with my 8-inch die. Okay, and I know I still got 1.5 to 2 inches of depth there that has to provide accommodation for the back half of her and for the wings. Okay, because I don't want it to look like she's trapped in the stone. I want it to look like she's standing in the stone. So there'll be a little bit of foreshortening suggestion in there. As I'm working this around, I'm using mostly a ripper to cut my channel. And as I'm doing it, I'm not working just straight back and forth. I'm tipping it a little bit, and I'm tipping it a little bit, and then I'm going down the middle, and that keeps the shoulders from binding as much. Okay, so you can go a little bit like this and then tip it as much as you can the other way. Try to open it up a little bit, and then I can take my regular machine chisel and just trim off enough to keep it open. Leave this volume, so I got it there for feathers. See if I can hold that up. That tool is pounded, all right? That tool is really abused, and the only thing holding that carbide in is the brazing rod. Okay? You don't need to slot these tools like everybody says you're supposed to, like they always do. You don't have to do that. This will stand up to real punishment if you do it right. Okay? That's why I showed you how to do it. As I'm working this, I'm using both my clamp together squares. Okay? As a reference from the back. Because I have a flat face, I can also use a straight edge that's held on and then measure my depth just with a ruler to see where I'm at. While you're doing this, and this, if you think about it, this is just like me showing you how I do panels. We panel a stone. Okay? We cut a reference point, and we work our way down between them, right? Put the plumb blocks on it, cut everything down, or how are we going to do it? When we're squaring the panel up, I'll cut a spot, and then I'll connect them, okay, and remove that. I don't try to wash over the whole big panel all at once and make it flat all at once, because what will happen is you'll end up with a low spot. You got to dig the whole panel down to level it, and if you do that big wide wash, you'll end up with another low spot. It's not a lot different here. as I'm cutting this, and I've got this really nice down into about, right about here. Now this is high, okay? I don't see it as easy, okay? It looks pretty good, but it's, if you measure it, there's like an inch of difference between here and here, where this is an inch taller. It's better for me to work this down a little bit, you know, in maybe a 2 or 3 inch strip, get it to my depth, and then go to my next section and get it to my depth, you know, almost to my depth, and then I can wash over and clean it up where they meet. That will help me limit the chance of having a really deep area, because you'll dig on this and think it looks great, and then find out that it really doesn't, okay? This fold, you know, looking on her, this fold is pretty right. This fold has to go back quite a bit to where it's going to be way back at the back, you know, beside this feather, way back in. I don't know if you can see this right here is going to go back a solid inch, inch and a half down at the bottom. That's going to change this flow an awful lot. It's going to really help it look good. It's also probably going to change some of how her leg looks as to for how it's tipped and also how it's rotated, because as we pull this together with her ankle, we'll probably straighten this up, and this will sink in a little bit here a little bit more. That will make her leg look more straight and not quite the curtsy kind of bend that it looks now. But I'm not going to go crazy depth on the side. I want that to work with the feathers, even though on the model it's cut way down to the side here. And what this, that right there looks like. See how deep this is, or is it? Yeah, see that's got to go a solid 2 inches right here along her side. And so I want to be careful with that, because there's a lot of feathers I've got to put in there. But I know I can go in that deep here above her shoulder. So I've got to sink that in, and I'll probably push this in after I get done this section here. I'll go up and move above her shoulder. And this is higher than what her shoulder is. I'll stay up, so I've got room to play with her shoulder a bit. It's really something when you take a break and go away. You look at her, she looks really thick and really beefy, and she's really too big for an angel. The combination of sinking this to let her come out of the stone and taking a visual break so you don't look at this the same way you did, where you know, I went and mowed all my lawns and everything and didn't do any stone yesterday. To try to get this to where I can see it again. Now, this doesn't look anywhere as near as massive as she did, and that's great. Okay, so you've got to, like I said, you got to be able to, you know, look, not just see, but you got to really be able to look at it and understand what's there before you start plowing stone. So I'm going to go and I'm going to keep working on this. I'm going to get this to depth down here to about where her ankle is, and then I'm going to, after I get that straightened out, depth, I'm going to go up above her shoulder. So I'll be back in a bit. All right, I'm making good progress. Let me see if I can take the camera and maybe back up a little bit and try to show you a little more of it. Okay? Take a look at this. Makes me want to flip the camera sideways, but I don't want to. The depth at her ankle really is become relevant. Now down at the bottom where there's all this debris down in here, I'm not worried about that because I still got to carve her feet. The stone, the flat face of stone has got to go down. That lower horizontal line is the actual top of the clip. So that's how much we dropped it, how much we stretched her. So I still got to carve her feet and the drapery direct there. But she's coming out of the stone a lot more. I've got a hole here at her shoulder that's still got to go about ½ an inch to get it even with the edge of the die, where it'll be 8 inches out of the 8-inch background. Then we still got 2 inches from there. And on the model, the top of her shoulder is behind this face here. And this face is what this line represents right here. So you'll find out. Let me hang the camera back up. See where I am here. You'll find out as you get the ground straightened out, when you start putting real areas of reference. I'm not going to say flats because we're not producing a flat ground behind her. Her wings technically are on top of the ground between her and down in here the wings would be out to her side. You know, we're all talking in hypotheticals because we're talking about angels and how their wings are related to the human body and everything. So, but she has some feathers behind here, but as this sinks even more when we carve it, she will continue to come forward. When you start putting these visuals in, you don't understand. Let's see if I can get down just a little bit. Point out a couple things. When you start straightening out the background like this right here, before it looked pretty good. I mean, it looked like it was relatively straight as far as depth goes. But when you start measuring, realizing that the difference between here and here, that this was 1.5 inches, this down here was 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches high, even though it looked relatively flat, because this flat, pretty flat, it isn't visual noise per se, but it is, because you look at this and this looks kind of flat, so you assume that because this is flat and back where it used to be, and this is relatively flat, that this is. But this was tipped like this, so that this part was a lot higher than this part, even though that looks flat. And that's where you get into real, when I keep talking about, don't start carving her fancy until you really know where everything is. You'll think everything's golden. You'll put it all together. That's why I haven't really done a lot with this drapery here. These last 2 or 3 folds are kind of just there. They're not really completed. They're just placeholders. I've got to move all those. And I knew I had to move them as I sink that back. And as this sinks, this is going to go, this will subdue a little more and go back and disappear. And this will become the dominant line. And that's going to narrow her up by like 1 inch in her hips. And that's going to skinny her up. Okay? So a lot of this, you got to just, she's still beefy, don't get me wrong, but if you carve her small so that she looks great, and then you start working on drapery, she starts looking really thin and emaciated, and that's not good. So the digging's a drag. I hate all this digging. Wear long sleeves, get covered up, you won't wear as much of it home. But I'll keep pushing on her up above her shoulder. I'm drilling in and knocking the webs out. It's going pretty fast, and then I'll have to take more off around her arm, because along the edge of her arm, that is at least flush with the side. And when we do all that, she's going to be way crazy full. So back to work. All right, I've got a bunch of this opened up. Up on her shoulder here, it's full out. Over here this is up about 1 inch. But I want to work with that. On the model, it goes all the way back. But I want to develop this elbow all at the same time. The same thing with the shoulder. I've got a little bit of a hump right here. My understanding is the shoulder is about right here. So all of that's going to come off. So I'm not too concerned right now. But pushing this back lifts her out. Oh, she looks much different with the light off. Yeah, you can see, you know, at least in this light, you've got some shadow. She's going to look a certain way. Big, small, attached in stone, whatever, until we really get to the end. Because all the time while we're carving this, she's subordinate to this stone, okay? The stone is bigger than she. I mean, it's a great big, there's this much stone plus more over there already. It's all there. And so she's always going to be, it gets into that visual noise, it's always going to look different than what you're expecting, is what we look at her, because we don't, it's not a matter of, it's not just a matter of looking at the model and having her stand proud with her arm down on the stone. She's sunk in this stone. There's still all this mass that's forward of the stone. All that's top that we got to cut off. Plus, we're going to go back to carve more, because we have to carve another wing and everything. When we start to really take that stone off, it's going to make her demonstrate a lot different than she does now, and that's part of the danger in carving the wrong, focusing on the wrong parts of it right now. I want to make her look pretty good, but I'll have to really finish her at the end. And what I want to do now, I want to leave the feathers, I want to leave the wings more towards the end. I want that to be delicate and everything. I want that to look right. And we've also got to carve the wings balanced with what we see for the wing on this side. This will go back, this will develop and become more full. This can be more rotund and pendant and look great, because if you go back a little bit here. For waist, this is really close right here. I don't know that I can take a lot more off there without being at risk. I got to push this fold back, all the way to the back. That's going to go way back. This feather will tip, and as that tips, it goes from being flat to being in like that, where it tips to go down. That will accentuate her lower extremities, because it will change the way the light, this won't be as dark. And I know it's hard to see this on the camera, but you know, there's only so many ways I can show you. As this tips, we lose a bunch of volume here, it will highlight this so this can bring it out. And by having this go back and also having this fold go back to the background and then to come out, those two curves should look really good. It should work well together down by our ankle. That's one of the stylized details. This right here is very typical of the genre. Okay, so those are the styling. I've mentioned that a little bit before. When you see somebody that's done a figure like this that isn't trained, they just put drapery on it, and it doesn't look right. Even though this is somewhat stylized to where it's not the way it may naturally fall, or that you'd have to get somebody to step like this a million times to get this kind of look. This whole area right here with this and the sweeps across and the pull in and everything, that is the way the drapery generally looks with anyone that's got a leg that's moving like that. It doesn't matter if it's St. Mary, if it's St. Peter, if it's St. Teresa, if it's Joseph, if it's Christ, it doesn't matter. That's what the drapery is supposed to look like. Same thing with the sleeve. There's certain things you'll typically have at least one of these pendant U's over the elbow. That's pretty normal. And then the rest of this is treated, you know, somewhat consistently, but it's having the fold where it's just a U, or whether it goes over and makes a W over the elbow, is pretty common. So, but I've got good volume up there. I want to work this fold back to try to make this look a little more like the model. And I waited because I had to push all that other material off there. I'm probably going to go in and put some minor saw cuts, just short cuts to break to, just to not impart a lot of energy into that, because this breaks really easy. Opening this up for the ripper as I'm getting down or when I'm drilling, if I open it up, I can just push it off with a chisel sharp. It works great. But she still is not as light and airy as she will be eventually. But it's really challenging to gauge her as to how she looks until the bulk of the stone is removed, because right now a huge amount of this stone is overwhelming what you see or what I see, and you got to understand that. And I keep going back to this arm. This arm is the money shot. That's what I'm trying to make sure I nail it. I want to get it right, so I want to get this arm really nice first, and then I can match this arm, you know, to the new arm and have everything dimensioned and scaled the way it should be, so that one arm isn't noticeably longer or shorter. They should both be the same length, and so pretty happy. I'm going to start working on this now and get back to it. Okay, as I'm working this, it's more of the same, more of the same. Some people like to do a lot of carving with their diamond saw, and they'll actually go in there and grind and saw and carve. And that's not my thing. Fix this cord. I want to carve it with a chisel, okay? But I went in and put quite a few saw cuts, you know, just not even a quarter inch apart, to open it up so it would be easier to break it out. As I mentioned, this is the head. We're looking at the head, so this is going to break and fracture really easily. Got a little bit of an undercut here, and that's going to kind of dictate where I just had roughed it out, and I got a little bit undercut here, and so this is getting down there where that could be. But I'm doing the same thing that I always do. This is the edge that I want, so I'm beveling it off. This is still really tall. When I get all this where I want and get my edge, I'll have a really nice strong, ideally I'll have it be as strong as it can be. And then I'll go back in here and remove this stock with, you know, regular chisel and 9-point everything, so that I'm not trying to push this whole fold back and potentially introduce stress into here where it could easily fracture and have that break off, because that's really easy to do. And you'll learn that doing drapery. Carving this stone is just like carving a great big bas relief on a regular die. All of these things are breaking the same way. I've got a pretty straight line right here. That's the remainder of the saw cut. I can axe all that off, and I get this flowing really well. I'm just going to blend this and work it. And I'm going to keep going deeper here and try to come and meet it so that this drops in here. And I don't really, I mean, you can sort of sketch your line on there, but what you're going to end up doing is you'll make your big plans. My favorite quote's out of Barry. One of the old masters, Frank Gale, says that pencil doesn't cut very well, does it? You draw all over the stone. Most of the time it's just a wasted effort. I'm going to blend this to make it match, to work with the small issues I've got here where I undercut a little bit. And I'll probably smooth that off before I waste this out a lot. I'll go ahead and just tune that up with the chisel while it's still fat, and then I don't have to go back on when it's thin to smooth it up. And but this fold has to move back, and if I go back to where it is, it's going to drop in and I'll have to go back a lot further. But I don't know if that's what I want to do, so I'm going to see, try to make sure that I got a really nice drop, and then I'm going to thin this fold up, because this should go behind here, and this disappears way up high. This disappears up here, so that's got to change a lot. And all of these things are going to change her mass, okay? And so that's why it's really important to not overcommit early on and get really deep and think you got it all fixed. Then you find out you should have left that material there, okay? Because you will. It will happen. So, but I wanted to get these pretty well evened up, so I knew where my ground was, so I knew how to fire the pusher back, so I knew how to tune the drapery to make all this look. All of this work that's done to move anything like this back is going to bring her forward, okay? And it's a cumulative effect, and I don't know, it's hard to explain it, but it'll become apparent, all right? Back to work. All right. Well, like I keep saying, I don't know how much you can really see, but worked this fold back quite a bit, and I like being able to see here. And I've got to tune that just a little bit. This is going back. It's not quite full depth yet. I got to work on the bottom. This part of the project, this is one of the things about anything that's big. You'll end up having work where you're sitting literally on the ground, right on the floor. And so get a foam pad to sit on, and it helps. But getting up and down gets old. Getting old gets old and everything. But as this moves back, and it's still really disconcerting, you look at that and you think that this is a lot different than it actually is, because this right here looks super deep, and it's not. It's actually up a 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch from over here. This is actually taller than this, and that's why it's really important to put together your ground before you start getting into serious development of the final element wherever you're working. Because if you don't have that reference, you will look and think that you're, usually, I'm looking at this, I would have thought I wasn't deep enough, that I still had to cut a whole bunch away, or that I was, at this point, it looks like I'm too deep. And so I thought I was deep enough, and I would have put this all together and committed it, and then come to find out I needed to go deeper, remove more stone, and it will come back and bite you, because you'll commit things and then you'll cut away support, and then you realize that you still got to move it around to get it where you want. So that's why I'm trying to get this edge sort of straightened out, where at least I know what my depth is, and then I can start working the drapery that goes back to that depth and get that cleaned up. Because this angle still has to change, because this is very vertical down here, and it has to tip like this. It has to go back and come back out. And so I've got to sink this. I'm in good shape up here. I was able to tune it a little bit. Can push it in some more still if I need to, and get rid of this thin area that I was talking where it's undercut a little. And this fold is going to disappear behind this one, and that's going to thin her up a lot. And so you really gotta keep a large perspective on this before you just start cutting stuff away and saying this doesn't look right and this should be in a different place. So, but I think that's probably enough for this video. Should be able to wrap it up here, and I'll just keep cutting. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculptor Studio with a Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for hanging around for 200 videos, y'all. Can't believe it.